Okay, good evening, everybody. We are live. Welcome back. Class 4, the final class of the CHY Business Competition Business Plan classes. We're excited that you're here tonight. So many people are participating. We just got our first participant from Toronto, Ontario. Welcome. We really have a representation from all across North America. We're looking forward to seeing your business plans in just a week from now. I hope you've been drafting those plans and perfecting them and honing them down. Tonight, in this final class, you'll learn the final segments of 3, 4, and 5 so that you could perfect those as well. Remember, there is no better way to launch a successful business than to do so with the clarity, direction, and vision that a good business plan can give you. So, looking forward. Tonight we have two distinguished teachers to present. First, I'll be introducing our distinguished teacher, Adam Eilenberg, Esquire of Eilenberg & Krauss, LLP, distinguished business lawyer, who's going to be sharing basic principles that all new businesses need to know with regards to covering the legalities. And after Adam speaks, we're going to be introducing the next speaker. But without further ado, let me introduce to you Adam. Take it away.
Thank you, Rabbi. Good evening, everybody. It's nice to see you at least over the internet, and hopefully I'll meet some of you, God willing, in person at the end of June at the final competition. Looking forward to that. And it's very exciting to hear about this entrepreneurial spirit within the Chabad community, and we're really thrilled to be part of that and to be lending whatever expertise we can to the effort. I wanted to highlight a few basic points for startup businesses, for entrepreneurs. We do a lot of counseling of entrepreneurs, and a lot of what we do is tell them when they don't need lawyers. But I wanted to raise some of the basic points that you should all be mindful of when you're thinking about starting your business or when you're actually starting your business. We prepared a brief handout listing some of the key points. If you have that with you, you can follow along. And I think it's a good takeaway to just sort of bear in mind going forward. Let's go through some of those points quickly. Hopefully that'll give you a good flavor of what things you should be mindful of. Okay, first is you're starting a business. What kind of entity do you use? This is a very important consideration. It's a legal issue. Do you do this as a sole proprietorship? Joe Smith tailor shop. Do you form a corporation? Do you form a limited liability company? There are a lot of pluses and minuses to each approach. Basically, the disadvantage of a sole proprietorship is you're personally liable. So God forbid something goes wrong, somebody can sue you, they can come after your house, they can come after your bank account. The idea of having a business organization is that it insulates you from personal liability. That's very, very important. That being said, it costs a few $100s to set up a corporation or a limited liability company. You set that up in a different state. Very often people use Delaware. If you're based here in New York may be simpler. A corporation has limited liability of its owners. That's important, as does a limited liability company. Limited liability companies are a bit more convoluted in their structure. You can be a little more creative in how you allocate ownership interests in the company among different partners. New York has a kind of a crazy rule for limited liability companies that you have to publish an ad in a newspaper announcing the formation of that. And that costs several hundred to a few $1,000s. So that deters many small businesses from starting. If you're going to be a corporation, you may have heard the expression subchapter S. Subchapter S is a tax status which enables the corporation not to be taxed as a separate entity, but that its shareholders, its owners, are taxed. That's something you can take up with your accountant. There are a lot of pros and cons in doing a subchapter S, which is sort of beyond the scope of this discussion, but it's certainly something to consider with your accountant and your legal advisor when you start a business. Okay, choice of entity. Number 2, arrangements among the founders. This is like getting married. You're going to be a partner together with someone who hopefully you trust, who you have the same life and business goals towards. If one partner has 8 kids in school and needs a lot of cash flow, and the other partner is single and just wants to plow money back in the business, you guys better figure that out up front, because otherwise it can really lead to some differences. What co-founders should do is should have a basic agreement. And that doesn't mean getting a lawyer involved in a 50-page agreement. If a small business, you can have a 4 or 5 page, 2-page memorandum just stating what your relative rights and obligations are. For example, who owns what? Are you 50-50? Are you 75-25? Who's the worker? Who's putting in the money? Those are issues you have to kind of think through and sort out. Similarly, who runs the business? Who makes decisions? If it's 2 partners, is it 50-50? If one guy says no, the other partner is out of luck, or one woman, or the other partner. If one partner decides to go to the beach after 6 months and says, "Hey, you know what? I've had it. I think I want to be the shaliach in Newport Beach. Go surfing." Well, that's a problem, because all of a sudden he's earned his 50% of the business and he's off surfing and the other guy's doing the work. You need to have some arrangements on that beforehand. You need to decide whether you're going to be devoting your full time to this business with your partner, or whether you can do stuff on the side. You don't want your partner saying, "Well, I'm going to do this half-hearted, but I'm going to open up a competing business with my cousin down in Florida." That's probably not going to work. So the bottom line with this element is you need to work out these arrangements with your partner before you start. A lawyer can help with that, but not necessarily. As long as you have it in writing. Again, formal, informal, but it's better than a handshake. That's something you really should have in writing. Okay, number 3, technology and goodwill. What's the value of this business? You may have a brand, you may have an interesting name, you may have some patents, you may have copyrights, you may have intellectual property, work product. You need to make sure when you form a business that the business owns those assets. That it's not like, "Well, I've got this nifty software. Yeah, we'll put it in the business, but if it doesn't work out, I'm going to do it on the side." If anybody is going to lend to the business, if anybody's going to invest in your business, they need to know that the intellectual property related to that business, the goodwill related to that business, lies in the business. Very critical. Similarly, with employees and consultants, there are a lot of legal constraints with that. Your accountant can help with that. If you're paying somebody a salary and they're an employee, you got to give them benefits. You got to make sure there's minimum wage. You got to do withholding. You've got to account for overtime. You need to make sure that people who work for you, whether it's employees or consultants or software developers, sign an agreement saying that anything they create while working for you belongs to the business, not to them. Last thing you want is some developer writing some great code for you, some great software for you, and running off and using it for somebody else. You've paid for that. You paid for that microphone. You bought that, and you own it. And you need a very simple agreement to say that. Similarly, with employees and consultants, when you start a business, you may not have a lot of cash to pay them salaries or consulting fees. And you need to have something in place. You need to think about having something in place about giving them equity incentives going forward. And that's called stock options or restricted stock. There are various complicated tax implications with how you do that. But it's something you need to think about. That's basically your currency. You don't have a lot of cash. So you say to a guy, "Listen, you write the software for us. I'll give you 3% of the company. I'll give you 2% of the company. You provide me some space as a landlord. You don't charge me rent. I'll give you 1% of the company." That's your currency. You need to think about that. Depends on the kind of business, but that's something. If you have the cash, you don't want to dilute your ownership. But if you don't, that's something you should think about. Okay, we're going down the list. I think we're still within our time frame. You're talking about raising money. Now, that may or may not be relevant for your business. If you're raising money, that needs to be documented, and that's an area where lawyers really do play an important role in documenting what happened. It's great to get a $25,000 loan from your Uncle Harry and $15,000 from your husband's uncle and this and that. But you need to document it, because when you're going forward, if God willing, the business is very successful, and all of a sudden Uncle Harry comes back and says, "Hey, by the way, meet your new 25% partner." You need to make sure you've outlined that. There are a lot of things to think about when raising money. It's borrowing money is less dilutive. It doesn't dilute your ownership share of the business as opposed to selling stock. But debt is debt, and if you can't pay, the lender comes in and he owns your business. There's a hybrid model called convertible debt, which is often used in early stage businesses where you borrow money and you say, I'm not going to pay you back. I will convert you into ownership of the company at a discounted price to what an investor gives me within the next year or two. So if an investor is going to give you $1 million for a certain value of the company, your $1 million loan would really be treated as $1.2 million or $1.3 million. It's a lower stock price or a higher principal amount. That's a whole valuation issue. All these issues of raising money really involve U.S. securities laws, and there are very, very strict laws about how you raise money and what you can and can't do. You can't go out on a street corner and say, "I'm selling stock to the first person who comes along." You probably go to jail if you do that. And so that's where lawyers play a very important role in helping raise money. I'll just tell you very briefly, when I advise clients on raising money, that can be a very expensive process in terms of legal fees. And what I usually say is, if you have some interested investors, let's gauge the interest first before you have the lawyer spending a lot of money. So let's do a 1 or 2 page term sheet summarizing what the terms of the investment will be before you hire someone like me to go out and write an offering memorandum and stock investment documents. That's an expensive proposition. Let's see if this is real first. But when you get to a point of raising money, you really need to have a lawyer involved. That'll segue into my last 2 points. One is, it's very, very important to keep good records of your business. It's important for the relationship between you and your partners to know who's doing what and who owns what and who's put in what. It's important for the IRS because, God willing, you're going to be making a lot of money, and you need to document how much money you put in and what kind of taxes you're going to pay. And without good record keeping, it's very hard to reconstruct that a year or 2 years in the future. Record keeping is also important when investors come in, lenders come in, business partners come in. You may want to have Microsoft may want to be a partner with you in your software, or Google or something like that. They need to know that you're a real company, that you own your intellectual property, that stockholders, the owners, are really who you say you are. Very important. So you should get into the discipline and the habits. It's not a lot of fun, but record keeping is critical for a startup business. My final point, and I'm getting the signal here, so I think I've used the time, and I hope this has been instructive. My final point is for you to make your best use of lawyers. Lawyers are expensive, and they are time consuming. It's a necessary part of a startup business. A lawyer should be your counselor and your business advisor instead of just a scribe writing things down. And a good lawyer will have that experience, but you need to know when to use the lawyer and when not to. And someone like me may tell you, you know what, you don't need me now. This is just not a good use of your money. You'll have a general lawyer as your consigliere, as your business advisor. And if things get more specialized, that general business advisor should be able to point you in the direction for specific issues that you need expertise on: intellectual property, patent law, tax, employment law, corporate law, real estate, litigation, God forbid. And so it's very important to know that a lawyer is an important part of your team, but that you should use him or her very judiciously, very discriminatingly, to get the best bang for your buck. That's it in a nutshell. I look forward to addressing questions when I meet you in person, and good luck to all of you, and hope all goes well. Thank you.
Okay, great, Adam. Thank you so much. That was fantastic. We're very excited. I should also mention that Adam will be one of the judges at the live pitch event. We're really honored to have such a distinguished person like Adam to be one of our judges. If you have any questions, particular legal questions, general legal questions, you could email them to me, info@chy.info, and I'll forward them to Adam, and if he could answer them quickly, we'll get them back to you. So remember also, as we're going to segue now to the next teacher, throughout the class, if you have questions, send them in by email, info@chy.info, and we'll try to answer them during the class, and if not during the class, then later. It gives me great pleasure to welcome our next teacher for the second segment of tonight's class, a really good friend, a CHYE mentor, somebody who I'm a secret admirer of his. This is Aaron Feller. Aaron is the principal at Evokia Solutions. He is a seasoned business development expert, and he brings years of working with large companies and helping them create their unique visions and craft them with strategies. And we're honored to have him come tonight, and he's going to teach the market research segment, which applies to sections 3, 4, and 5 of your business plans. So without further ado, let me welcome Aaron.
Good evening, everybody. My name's Aaron Feller. Thank you, Rabbi Wurdy, for that very nice introduction. I have a lot of respect for Rabbi Wurdy. We've done a lot of work together, and he does some amazing things for the young people of Crown Heights and Chabad in general. And this project, the business plan competition, is just the series, the end of a series, the latest, I should say, in a series of some amazing and very innovative ideas that Rabbi Wurdy's come out with. Almost every time I have a conversation with Rabbi Wurdy, he has a new idea. The difference between Rabbi Wurdy and other people is that when I talk to him a week later, the idea is usually done already. And I think that's amazing. I want to wish him a lot of hatzlacha, going from strength to strength in everything that he does. We're here tonight, this evening, to talk about market research. And I want to start out for a minute to talk about why we need it and what the purpose is, and then go through a little bit on the details of how it's done, and especially how it applies to the business plan competition, and how you guys can win that competition and those prizes that are going to be coming up soon. So the first question is, market research, what is the purpose? Why do we need market research? And it's probably the most critical part of the business plan, because if you're looking for an investor, or if you want to know if your business idea is a good one, you may have a lot of expertise, you may have a lot of experience, but until you actually try it in the real world, you don't know if it's going to succeed or fail. Market research is your closest you can get to that. It's getting out of the way you think and getting out of your experiences and trying to get other people's experiences to try to get an objective view of whether your business idea is going to succeed or not. So market research is to get out of your mind and try and understand the needs and wants of what your customers have. So market research is about getting out from your thinking into the way other people think, and it's not easy. And the main challenges are like this. What questions should you ask people? Where should you get the information? And then how should you get those answers? So there's two key areas in how someone can get their information. And these are the two steps that a person should go through. There's actually a step before this, which is first you want to plan what information you need. Then I would go to the second part here, which is gathering the objective information, which is what do other people say and know. And then the last part is to analyze it. Just because I have information, I want to know how does it relate to my business. And the most important part is what does it prove. The point of all the market research is to prove as much as possible that your business idea works, and then who and where it works with. Today we're going to talk about two key areas. We're going to talk about identifying targets and conducting an analysis. Probably the number one question I get is, who are my targets and who should I be identifying? Who should I be selling to? I'm just going to take one quick moment to talk about that. A lot of people, when they start a business, their belief is that they should try to sell to as many people as possible, to try and sell to everybody. That, if you listen to the last class by Yossi Applebaum, he brought it out very nicely with the USP, where he mentioned that is incorrect. If you try to sell your product to too many people, you end up making a lot of people a little bit happy. And very often there's somebody else that could do what you're doing, perhaps faster, cheaper, or smarter. The best way to be successful, especially today, is to find a product that's not for everybody, but it's for a very specific amount of people. Even just focusing on the Jewish market, for example, will give you an advantage over everybody else that's out there. So having a focus for your business is key to being successful. In general, you always want to be thinking about, how do I stand out from everybody else? If I'm walking down the street and somebody else is walking down the street and we're selling the same product, how am I going to be different? Or if I have a product, how's my product or service going to be different from everybody else's that's out there? And the more unique you could be, the more successful you're going to be. A good way to think about it is to make a product or have a service that someone will hate. And if someone's going to hate your product, hopefully there'll be people that will love it. And those are going to be your good customers. And you just want to make sure there's enough of those. But if everybody just likes your product and everyone says it's okay, and you try to make it for everybody, make everybody happy, very often you'll end up with something that's just average, and it's very hard to succeed. Businesses that stand out can be more successful. Yes, it's a bigger risk, but the chances of success are much higher if you're going to take those risks. So once you know how your business is different from everybody else, now you can identify your targets. And you can say, my product, it's going to be different because simple thing is it's cheaper than everybody else's. So once you know it's cheaper, then you could start to identify your targets. Or if it's going to be better or higher quality, any of those other examples that were discussed in the last class. Once you know how your business is unique and different, your next question is to say, well, who's going to buy my products? And that is how you can start identifying your targets. So today, we're going to talk about the types of targets that are out there. We're going to talk about what to look for once you've identified your targets, and also where to look and get the information. Once we've identified our targets, the second part of today's class will talk about how to actually conduct the analysis so that we can get all the information that we need. And there's 3 types of analysis. We're going to go through the market/consumer analysis, the industry analysis, and then we're going to go through a competitive analysis too. As it relates to the market, to your business plan competition, it goes as follows. You have your 3 key elements, which is section 3, 4, and 5. And section 3 will talk about the target market and the first market analysis. Section 4 talks about the industry analysis and the trends. And section 5 talks about the competitive analysis. And then hopefully we'll have some time for some questions and answers. It's important that anybody who has any questions should send them in to info@chye.info. This is a live session, so any questions that come in during this time, hopefully we'll have a few minutes at the end, and we'll go through some of those questions. We'll go through in the order of first come, first served, so if you have a good question, write it up and send it in to info@chye.info. Okay, part 1 is the target market. We're going to talk about what it is and how to identify it. And the point of a target market is to know your customers. Again, once you know what your business is, you know how it's different and how it stands out, then you can start to think about your customers, and you want to get into their shoes, as was mentioned in the last class. The more you can get into their minds and the way they think, the more you can address their needs and figure out how your product is addressing their needs, and then you could speak to them in that way. If you're trying to save them money, then you could talk in that way. For example, if we decide to pick a business idea of creating a kosher chocolate bar, let's say it's gluten-free, and this might be something new that hasn't been done. I believe there might be some out there, but let's say you have something that's different than anybody else's. So to start to understand who are your customers, you want to think about what age they are, you want to think about where they live, you want to think about what they can afford, you want to think about why they're shopping. Some people are shopping because it's a need, some people are shopping because it's something they want. So a kosher chocolate bar may be something that people want, but it also may be something people need. Very often parents may have a gluten-free child, and they need to have treats for that child. And in the kosher market, it may be difficult to find good treats. And they go into school, and all their friends are having chocolate bars, and they can't have it. So there actually becomes a need for a parent as well. In that case, that would also go to the next part about the analysis. you'd already start to know about how to market your product because you already know who your target is. And you already can start to think about where the people are. If you're marketing to parents, it means that they have children and they're buying other products for children, and you can already think about where you're going to be marketing to them. So target marketing is about knowing your customers. And there's 3 kinds of target markets, and it's important to look at all 3 of these. And every business can have a mix of all 3 of these. You have B2C, business to consumer, B2B, business to business, and the last one, business to government. Some businesses can focus entirely on the government. The government is the biggest business in the world. And if you can have a product that can be sold to the government, that's very, very powerful. And any business can have any 1, 2, or all 3 of these, depending on what they need to sell. For example, if we go back to our example of a kosher gluten-free chocolate bar, you would want to sell, first of all, to the business, to the consumer. So your B2C is how you speak to the mother or the parent buying that chocolate bar, or to a consumer, a person that's actually buying the chocolate bar, maybe an adult. That would be how you talk to the business to consumer. On the other hand, you also need to talk to business. You have retailers, you have stores that you want them to stock your chocolate bar. You need to speak to them in a very different way. They don't care necessarily about how good it tastes. They just care about the price, or they just care about how it's going to look in their store, or what else they have. So it's a very different market, and they have very different needs and wants. And when you're approaching the market, if you're talking to a store owner, it's a whole different conversation than if you're talking to somebody that's actually going to buy it. So your product and your packaging have to follow that. And business to government is the same thing. We're going to go through each of these targets in a little more detail. The business to consumer, also known as B2C. These are some of the things that you could look into for your product. You have the geographic profile, which is where they live, and about those, and all the details about where they live. If you're focusing on the Jewish market, you know already, or you could do the research about where the big Jewish markets are. The frum markets, we know where some of the big frum communities are, and that might be a place to start targeting. Demographics, you have your product, you want to look at the age, the gender, the family size, the marital status, income, education, who is going to be buying your product. And the more information you have about that person who's buying it, the kind of person that's buying it, the more you're going to be able to target your business plan and the actual product for it to be successful. Another way to look at this is to kind of say, if I have a product, what do all the people have in common that are going to buy it? So that's another way to try and think about who's actually buying the product. And then obviously psychographics, once you already know who they are and where they live, you can start to think, well, what else do they do? Do they go to, if you're looking at kids, well, they go to play parks, they go to school. What other things do they do with their life, day to day, on a weekly basis, on a daily basis, and try to think about what they do and where they go so that you can target them and other opportunities where they can buy your product. Let's say you have it online. Where do these kids go online? What websites or what videos are they watching that you could advertise or get your product awareness across to them? An example, this is how you would take all this information and you would put it into your business plan. It would look like this. You would take information, and you see the words in bold here. That's what you would find out from your research. But to be in a business plan, you want to write it in a way that is more expression as a regular English language. You would write like this: the target market is comprised of car and motorcycle enthusiasts, if that was your target market, located in New York City. Then you would continue, let's say, research shows that these individuals are typically employed, they're both married, they subscribe to these magazines, sometimes they're risk takers. So the more you think about your clients, you can see here, this is a great example of how you have some idea of who your customers are, and this is how it should look in your business plan. And the clearer you are, the easier it's going to be to develop your business and even to get an investor, because your investor has to be able to identify with who your consumers are. And obviously numbers are very, very important, and that's the second point here. Studies show that in Brooklyn, you have sales in this sector are 73.5 million, and there's an average of 891,000 drivers in Brooklyn, and these are things that are easy to look up. We'll talk about that later, and this is a great example for business to consumer, B2C, how it would look in your business plan. Second part, business to business. The kind of demographics you're looking for about a business is a little bit different to the B2C. So in B2B, these are the kind of demographics you could look for. You could look at the industry, the years in business, the company sales, number of employees. So for example, if you're selling your kosher chocolate bar into retail stores, do you want to go for the biggest stores, the smaller stores? Do you want to go for kosher stores, or you want to go for Costco? There's so many different options, but you want to know what your options are out there. Who are the people that you could possibly sell this to, and what do they have in common? And who do you not sell it to? That's part of identifying your target market, is who is the target, and to be very clear, who is not the target. And again, you have the psychographics, getting a little bit deeper. Who are those people? If someone is technically advanced, can they use your product? If you have a store that just doesn't have a proper credit card swiping system, can they use your product or not? Any details that you have that would help you narrow down your market by either adding to it or removing from your list of potential people that you could approach for your product will help you in identifying your product. An example like this of how the B2B example would look in your business plan: we target small business owners with up to 20 employees with 1 to 5 million revenue. And this also would help you with the second part, which is actually identifying the price that your product is going to be at. If you're at a low price item, you may go for smaller businesses. Higher price item may go for bigger businesses. But your job in putting together your business plan is to know who can afford it and how they're able to pay for it. So if small business owners cannot buy it, then you have to be aware that they can't buy it, and you have to only target and focus your business on people that can afford it. Next, and the last part, is business to government. This is the third area that you could look into. It's not very relevant to most businesses, but if you do have an option of selling it, let's say our kosher chocolate bar, if we could get it to soldiers, kosher soldiers out there, or even just gluten-free, there may be a market for that if we can get it into the right federal agency. Usually you need some experience to get into the federal government. It's not easy. I'm not going to spend too much time on it, but if it's a product that makes sense, that the government could be interested, or if you have a contact in the government, that these are very, very powerful things that you should leverage. And this is an example of how it would look, again, in a business plan if it relates to you. So that's the first part of the business plan lesson today, which talks about the identifying the target market. I'm now going to the second part, which talks about the market analysis, and there's 3 kinds of analysis that we're going to go through, and the trends. Remember that if you have any questions, please email us info@chye.info. And I believe we have quite a number of questions coming in, and I see we have a lot of people signed up as well to this webinar from around the world. And welcome everybody if you're just joining us. We're now going to the second part of the video webinar tonight, which is talking about the analysis. And this is going to cover 3 parts in the business plan competition. And each part we're going to go through in a little bit of detail. The first one is the market/consumer analysis. What that means is we're going to analyze the actual people that are buying your products, and this is our market. Market are the people that are buying it. And the second part is the industry. That is everybody that could possibly buy the similar kind of product. So if the kosher chocolate bar, the industry, we could look at the kosher industry. That's much bigger than just chocolate bar industry. We could also look at the food industry. And those are important because you want to look at different things. Like in the food industry, I'm selling a small chocolate bar, but what are people doing in the industry on a whole? Let's see people that are buying candy. That's similar to what we'd be selling. What are they doing? Let's say more people are buying that online. Or Amazon, their chocolate bar sales, there may be a way to find out that they doubled them in the last 3 years. If you find that information, even just their food sales doubled in the past 3 years. This is very powerful information that you could use to relate to your product, because your product generally isn't operating in a vacuum. Your product or service is operating in a very large space, and it's important not to think that you're doing your own thing. Most generally, you have something else you can relate your product to. So if you can look at your industry and you can say, this is the industry that I'm in, and you identify that, you could look at the trends of what is happening in that industry. If you have a specific kind of service and everybody's making apps, well, maybe that's something you want to look into as well. So it's important to be aware of your industry and what's going on, and you prove it by having it in your business plan. And the last part is competitive analysis. Probably the most important part is to really be aware of who is competing with you. A lot of Jewish business owners that I've met like to think that they're not competing with anybody, and sometimes it's true, but very often there's somebody else that is competing with you. And a good way to think about that is if someone doesn't spend the money on you, where would they spend that? So even if you have a Jewish entertainment video, and you could say, well, there's not too much, let's say, that is competing with that, you could think, well, what else could someone do with that money? What other ways could someone get entertainment for the same price? And that would be your indirect competition. So it's important to understand what your competition is, and let's go through this now. Number one, the first analysis we're going to go through of the three is the market and consumer analysis, which relates to section 3 in your business plan. These are the kind of questions that you want to ask. You want to analyze about the consumer analysis and the trends. Trends means how something is going in the future, looking at the past and the future to try and understand, looking at the past to try and understand about how things will be in the future. So you can look at how large is this market. Again, the market that you focus. If you're in the kosher market, then look at that. How much money do people spend? You want to know your price. So you want to have some idea how much people are spending in the entire market. And then you can understand what percentage of that you can get. And also what changes are occurring, how things are going forward. A lot of people have trouble relating a big market to their business, but it is important to be able to say, let's say people are spending $1 million a year in chocolate. It's important to be able to have some kind of plan that says we believe we can get a certain percentage of that market. And that way you can try to relate, have some idea of how big your business can actually grow. And then you could start to say, well, how do we get 10% of that market? And 10% would mean that out of 100 people that come into the store, 10 people buy your product. That's quite ambitious, but again, it's important to try to have those numbers clear. Even if it's just 1%, and you have that number clear, and you say within 2 years, I think we could get 1% of the market. Well, you know what that 1% of that market is worth. If you've done the research, you know how big the market is, then you know how big 1% of that market is, and you have it down to an exact figure. And that way someone can invest in your business because they can see, okay, it makes sense to me they can get 1% of the market, and the market is $1 million. Well, 1% of the market is a fixed number that a person can put their money behind. In doing analysis and research, there are two ways to do research, and this applies to all three of the marketing analysis. There's primary and secondary research. Primary research is about research that is connected to us. And we're getting some questions that are coming in. We're going to deal with that soon. Primary research is research that is connected to us directly. For example, informal interviews, you're just stopping people in the streets. If you have a product and you want to have it in the store, like a kosher chocolate bar, you can actually talk to people buying the chocolate bar in the store, and you can get some really good information. Of course, you probably want to let the store know before you do that. But even talking to the store owner could give you a lot of information too on the B2B side. So you may want to talk to the store owner about your idea, see what he thinks about it, the pros and cons, what he would need, what price he would need, and then ask him if you could talk to some customers, and you talk to people buying other chocolate bars, and you could ask them why they're choosing this one, why they're choosing a different one, and these are very insightful pieces of information that you could get. Of course, focus groups, which is actually paying people or convincing people to sit down and answer your questions, general questionnaires, which could be done via email. You could use other companies that maybe have already send out emails every week to their clients, and you could ask them to put some questions in there for you. You generally want to have some kind of incentive, something they can win, so you get good responses, and online surveys is the same thing. Secondary research is much easier, and this is looking up in general places online. Google's a great place. You can see what people are searching for. You can look at the US population. You can drill down using some of these surveys to even get, using the census and the surveys to get how many people live in a specific zip code, how much they spend, how many kids there are, how many adults there are. Very, very useful information that you will be able to use in your business plan. And these are some other lists of where you could find the secondary research. That brings us now to our second analysis stage. This was the market analysis. The next one we're going to go to the industry analysis, which now we're going to look at the general industry. And the big question is which industry you're in. And I'll give a list of points, resources later, but the way you want to do this is you want to look at the NIAC codes. NIAC is a list of codes which are set up by the government, I think originally for tax purposes. And there's thousands of different sectors, business sectors, and you can use that list to find out which code you're in. There's also, I think, SIC codes where you can figure out which industry you're in. And once you know your industry, it's easy to find all this kind of information on that industry and relate it, just pull that into your business plan. Size of the industry, the growth, seasonal factors, maybe you sell more at specific months or days of the year. Regulations, economic and political issues. It's very important to know what's happening politically. There's some industries like the cash loans business, which is very hot right now, but everybody's aware that in other countries there already have been laws passed to limit that kind of business, and everyone expects that it will happen here in the near future. So it's important to know that if you're looking to get into a business, you want to be aware not just of what's happening right now, but looking at the economy and the political changes. It's a very real question. If if Trump or Hillary is the president next year, it could really affect a certain business, especially if something like that's going through the Congress. So even though it might be a small business, if you're really going to put your heart and soul into something, you don't want to put it in and suddenly the law can change in a year's time. So it's important at least to be aware of what's going on, even though obviously it's very hard to predict what is going to be happening. Your awareness is what's important, because again, you're looking at it from a business investor's perspective. He's going to want to know, well, what could go wrong and how could I lose my money investing in your business? And if you've thought about it, it just shows that you're aware of that, and that would be very helpful. Other things to look at are barriers to entry, meaning how hard is it for somebody else to do what you do? This usually means, let's say you have an advantage, programming well, you have a contact somewhere. These are powerful things that make it very difficult for somebody else to do what you do, and you should add this to the business plan in the industry in general, or something that you may have in specific data or information on that would help you be stronger in the industry than somebody else. Or you may just have general barriers to entry that may be hard for you to start, and at least if you're aware about these and you put them in the business plan, your investor may have relationships you don't have to help you overcome these. The third analysis, we go into this one a little bit more detailed. It's probably the most interesting one, but it's looking at your competitors, and you want to know all about them. And the key is, of course, knowing your competition. Who they are is very important. A great example is a company like Kodak, which for those of us who are a little bit older, they were a huge company that made camera and films. They went out of business very fast, and the main reason was they didn't really know what kind of business they were in. They did not see and expect the whole digital revolution. So knowing your competition is really important, to know who are you really competing with. For example, a lot of people try to sell on Amazon without knowing that Amazon is competing with anyone that's too successful on Amazon. So it's important to know that and know who your competition is, and then we can analyze them and go through their strengths and weaknesses. We'll talk about that in a minute. Your competitive advantage, what do you have that nobody else has, and a matrix which looks like this. This is a competitive matrix where you put along the top, you're going to put your actual competition. You may have 3 different stores that compete with you with 3 different products. Let's say our kosher chocolate bar. There may be 3 other kosher chocolate bars that are health related or even gluten free, and we would put them at the top of each column. And then on the left, you want to have all the different in a row. Each row is going to be a different kind of information that would differentiate you from that other product. So here it's talking about a car. You have custom-made work, you have unique auto parts, online presence. For us, we may have a special flavor, we may have a range of flavors, we may have different packaging, we may have more availability, we may have a longer shelf life. All the things that relate to your product, you want to list them down here. And then you put an X of where you're stronger, or where the other companies have or don't have, or you can even rate them like 1 to 5 or 1 to 3 about how strong your product is compared to those. And you may even go back and change your product because you see somebody else has something you don't have, and you want to be able to stand out. The second thing you want to do is a SWOT analysis. A SWOT stands for 4 different things, which I'm going to show you an example in a minute. SWOT stands for strengths, weaknesses, opportunities, and threats. So the first 2 strengths and weaknesses are like this. We have, you want to look at you compared to, when you're looking at your competitors, you want to know all about them. And obviously you're comparing yourself to them as well. So you want to look at them. Who's strong in customer satisfaction, awareness, quality of the product, the staff, the knowledge, the teamwork, their marketing, their management, their location. What are the strengths that each of those have, and what are their weaknesses? And by doing that, you could see how ways that you can exploit those weaknesses by being stronger in places that other people are weak. The other 2 parts of the SWOT analysis is the opportunities and the threats. You want to look at demographics and technologies that your competitors have. Let's say someone has a very, very old system, or someone has an app and you don't. So these may be strengths that they have that you have to be aware of in your business plan when you're starting out, and obviously be aware that any strengths are things that your investor is going to want to know how you're going to deal with them. And essentially what you're going to do is put together a box like this, and you have your strengths of each company, each competitor go in one side. Strengths and weaknesses go at the top, opportunities and threats go at the bottom. And generally what you want to try and do is figure out how you can use your strengths. You make another box like this for your company, and you try to put your strengths against your competitors' weaknesses. Here's an example of how the SWOT analysis could look when it's filled out. The different points and some details for each of your competitors. And for this business plan, you probably just want to summarize all your competitors into one general box. So you put all the strengths into one box, all the weaknesses into another box, all the opportunities and threats into their own specific boxes. So that's the second part of the class today. I'm just going to talk about a little bit about how that relates to the competition application, so it's important to see where it goes. This is what you guys have to be doing for this competition, and to make sure, of course, that you guys get on top and that you win. And here are the three sections. So section 3 is the market analysis and target market. Okay. Again, if you guys have questions, now is the time to send in a question, info@chye.info. We're coming up to the end, and any questions that are in, we will take in the next few minutes. So please send your questions to info@chye.info. Okay, so we have our 3 sections of the business plan that you guys have to fill out based on the class today, and this is them. Section 3 is the market analysis and target market, and your goal is to demonstrate that there is a market and opportunity. So your idea is not just something that's out there, but there's real people that are ready to buy it. You want to describe who's going to buy it, and then you want to say how many people are going to buy it. That's your first part. Second part, which is section 4, is the industry analysis. So which industry are you in? How big is it? What's happening in the industry? What's changing? What's growing? What kind of challenges do other businesses have in this industry? And the last part, section 5, is your competitive analysis and your strategic position. So your competition, it's important to identify who they are and analyze them. What do they have? They could be local, it could be international, it could be online, offline. Identify who is competing with you and identify their strengths and weaknesses and put it together in a SWOT chart. Last, I have some resources which you guys should definitely look up, especially for the secondary research part. You'll find this very useful. You want to look up online the NIAC/SIC codes. Those are 2 different words, 2 different ways of listing businesses. So any business that you have, any business idea that you have should fit into one of those categories. And then once you have the category that you're in, you have the right spelling and the right identification, there are all these other websites which will help you find information and data about those. One is IBIS World, and his spelling is there on the screen. BizStats and the Census.gov will tell you a lot about different information. So Census.gov will tell you about demographics, so you can put in your zip code and you can figure out who lives there and how many people live there and what the average people make, and all incredible details that you will find very useful. BizStats will tell you more about your business and an industry, and IBIS World is also more business related. These are the resources that I think you guys will find very, very useful. My information is there in the corner in case you guys have any general questions and I can be of assistance. I'm going to stop now for a minute, take any questions that have come in, and I will continue from there. Okay, we have a question that has come in. The question is as follows. Large businesses can be researched online, but small businesses can't be. And they won't tell me if I call and ask, like some Judaica stores, they won't tell me, for example, how much they make a year, so how do you prove it? So that's a great question. Generally, you can do research in the big picture, but if you're trying to do something in the small picture, how do you get the information? So you have to be a little bit smarter. First of all, manufacturers are more likely to share information about how much they're selling. Also, if you come to a store like a Judaica store and you want to have information, you can try to explain to them why you're asking the information. If you're making a new product, they may be more interested to help you. You can also tell them, if you help me, I'll give you a better deal when it does come out. And they don't want to tell you maybe their total sales, but they may tell you in general. You can ask them about books, so you can ask them about children's books. Try to be more general. And also, you have to be a good salesman. You have to be able to come in and discuss what your needs are and understand what people do and don't want to share. You could also sometimes talk to end users in the store. You can kind of see, if you're standing in the store, you can see what people are doing. You have 10 people in the store, what do they buy? But sometimes also cashiers are very important people. They can be in the store for 10, 20 years, and they really understand the business inside out. And again, you want to be upfront and honest with them, but you can ask them, what do people generally buy? What do people prefer? You can come into the store and say what sells more, this product or another product. They have a lot of information that can help you. And also, even for Judaica, you could look online about what's selling and what's not selling. Amazon is a great tool. You don't know sales numbers, but you do have ranking. And there's other websites that you can look around. You can see, even looking on a regular Judaica website, you could tell which products are selling well by the way the website is structured. Certain products that come towards the top generally sell more or have better margins. But the best thing is to have if you're going into an industry, have somebody that you know. You could talk to the CHYE. They have a lot of connections. They have a lot of people that have a lot of experience in many different industries. And one or two of them can connect you maybe to somebody that has the answers that you need. So I think the answers are there. Sometimes you have to be a little bit more creative to find out the information that you need, but it is all out there and it's all gettable to be able to deliver your business plan. I think we're getting out of time for now. So we're going to call it a day, and thank you all for watching. And I'm just going to hand back over to Rabbi Wordy, who's going to take you from here. Thank you for watching. Best of luck with the competition. Be well.
Everybody, it's hard to believe. It's been four weeks now, 4 weeks, 4 classes. This is the end. This is the final class, final live class. All of the classes, including this one, are all recorded and they're all available for you to watch on demand when you can, on your schedule, on your terms. Now the timer is on. The clock is running. There is just under a week for you to submit your business plans. The deadline is next Sunday, June 5th. I just wanted to emphasize, this is up on the website, the most important things that you should be including in your business plans. Please remember that, here we go. Number one is your plan should be convincing, and this is what the judges will be looking for, a convincing plan that's well researched and well written. Now, you don't have to spend your time investing in the grammar and the language. Obviously, you want to do spell check and try to be as good as you can be, but focus that it should be clear and well written so that the judges could pick it up and read through it without too much difficulty. Now, in your plan, you should be thorough and address all the elements. We have the outline, we have the 9 sections. Make sure you hit all of those sections, and especially the parts that are particularly applicable to your business, make sure you include them. And it's important, obviously, your idea, in order for it to be a winning idea, it should be a viable idea, something that's likely to succeed. Additional considerations are important for the business plan competition. You should include in your plan what you would do if you won the grand prize. What would you do with the $7,500 cash and with all the business services? Explaining the need and how it will boost your business is something key. And an additional extra credit thing is, how your business will positively affect the economy and our community. So those are the key things to have in mind as you write your business plans. We're really looking forward to seeing those finished products next week. Everybody, please give it all you got. And remember, it's the journey, not the destination. And I hope that, as I got a beautiful email just last night from one of you, that doing the market research and writing the business plan has helped clarify and give direction to their business endeavors. And so we hope that all of you have been learning as you've been writing, and all of you will be the better for participating in this competition. Have a wonderful week. All the best.